Okay. Welcome to Bringing Home Beacon Hill. This show is a reflection of how state and national policy impact us here at home, specifically Wayland and the Metro West region. And for our very first show, I am thrilled to introduce our state representative, Carmine Gentile, who represents 3 precincts in Wayland, as well as precincts in Sudbury, Marlborough, and Framingham. Thank you for being here, Carmine.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, Elaine.
So there is a lot going on right now, needless to say, and I'd like to focus these few minutes that we have on our local economy, specifically businesses that are located in our town and in our region, and understanding that Massachusetts, unfortunately, right now is a national leader in unemployment. But there are a lot of initiatives going on to support small businesses. Could you share with us kind of a few top priorities for supporting small businesses, particularly during the COVID pandemic?
Well, absolutely. So small businesses really, to stay open and to do business, rely on the broader health of the community. And the broader health of the community, really, we need to do more testing. We need to be able to have testing that has results very quickly. People have been getting results a week later, more than a week later. That's useless. We can have results in minutes or hours, not days later. And also contract tracing. So we've been seeing some spikes recently, especially with the colleges opening up. We've been seeing some spikes, and the contract tracing is essential, and we're gearing up now to be able to do more.
So drilling that down, that public health obviously is so tied to the economy. What about businesses right now that are struggling? I'm thinking like restaurants and other kind of shops that are struggling with laying off employees and so on.
Yeah, a good point. I mean, right now we've already lost 20% of our restaurants have closed and are not coming back. So to help the 80% that are still with us to continue with us, we can do some things. We've had a lot of outdoor dining, and with the outdoor dining, with the colder weather coming, that could and eventually will limit the outdoor dining. But to keep the outdoor dining going as long as possible, we're making millions of dollars of grant funds available to restaurants. They can use these grant funds to purchase heaters so that they can, heat outdoors and extend extend the time that they'll be able to continue outdoors like that.
And then, is that specific to this area? I'm thinking of, for example,
this will be statewide.
Statewide.
But, I'm sure that restaurants in Wayland will take advantage of it.
Right.
Yeah, and Sudbury and Framingham. Yeah.
I'm thinking. I know, like for example, the Foundation for Metro West, has given out over $1 million to local organizations, that type of thing, on kind of a private sector focus. Are there things happening on Beacon Hill, that you think will have the biggest impact for businesses and for employment in our region?
So, one of the big costs for small business are the rents that they pay or the mortgages they're paying, and of course you're aware we have a moratorium right now on rent actions, on evictions and foreclosures. But what we also need to do, and we have legislation to do this that's in conference committee right now, we need to set up a state fund to really help small businesses and help landlords with mortgage payments that it's impossible for them to make because they haven't received the rents. Okay. So we're still waiting to get some more meaningful help from Washington, but in the absence of that, we'll do the best we can. We have a very substantial rainy day fund, $3.5 billion. We also have an opportunity to raise new revenue without taxing residents. And there are things we can explore.
What is that opportunity to raise revenue?
So, surprisingly enough, we all pay sales tax, and we use credit cards a lot, and we use debit cards a lot. And right now, when we use the credit card or the debit card, the payment goes to the vendor. Then later on, maybe a month later or quarterly, the vendor sends their taxes to the Department of Revenue, okay? Sends the sales tax. So if instead of waiting to get those later payments, we simply electronically transferred the sales tax immediately to the account of the Department of Revenue, we would actually realize an additional $500 million of revenue each year, which it's incredible.
That is incredible. Yeah.
It is, it's just absolutely incredible. And we're not raising anyone's taxes.
When they say time is money, I guess.
What's that?
When they say time is money.
Well, that's right. That's right. So I suppose the flip side of that would be that, well, you know, the business has that money for a period of time before they have to send in the tax. And they get the float, and maybe that helps them a little bit. But $500 million without raising taxes.
Right.
And that's only one example. Another example would be the GILTI, the guilty, which, forgive me, I don't have it written in front of me what that means. But basically, it is multinational corporations that are having profits overseas, that are huge profits overseas. Other states have already been taxing those profits. We haven't in Massachusetts. Why not? Why not? How much could we realize if we imposed a guilty tax on these multinational corporations for their overseas profits? $400 million a year.
So you're really thinking about how to kind of capture some of this money that already exists and funnel it for relief for households and businesses.
This would be additional revenue that the Commonwealth would have, and we could do two things. We could do a number of things with that revenue. We could put it in the general fund and say, okay, this is just money in the pot, or we could dedicate it. For example, we could dedicate one or the other of those revenue sources to funding transportation. And when I say funding transportation, fund a transportation bond bill, or fund an education bond bill to build schools, fund a transportation bond bill to build infrastructure that we need desperately. So basically, if you wanted to float $1 billion bond, you'd need $100 million. Mm-hmm. So you have $500 million revenue stream. That's going to pay the debt service for a $5 billion bond. And yeah.
That's really interesting. And to bring it kind of back close to home,
yep.
Back to Wayland, I wanted you to give some examples, some concrete examples of the ways that your work and Beacon Hill have been able to support businesses and people here.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So maybe about a month and a half ago or so, I got a call from Paul Cavicchio. Cavicchio is a wholesaler. He's the biggest farmer in Sudbury. He employs over 400 people at his farm. And his wholesale, the plants that he produces wholesale go to places like Russell's Garden Center, Mahoney's Garden Center. He called me and said, gee, Russell's can't buy. They can't buy what they need to sell to their customers because the state hasn't promulgated the rules and regulations under which they can operate during, when they're allowed to open. So they can't open until they have those rules and regs. So what I did was I looked around. I saw that New York State had already done that. They'd already promulgated rules and regs for their greenhouses, for their and just took those. I presented them to the governor's COVID-19 command center, and they adopted them within a few days. And within a few days, they were out. And Russell's and Mahoney's and other garden centers around the state were able to then say, "Oh, okay, now we know. Now we can start selling." And so they immediately put in their orders, and all the May planting. I mean, this was, right, the crunch time for doing all the May planting. It went forward. It went forward. So that's one example. I'll give you another example. I got a call in Wayland. We have Longfellow Health Center, and within 2 or 3 miles of that health center, there were probably 50 other health centers or fitness centers. So they called me and said, "Gee, we're in stage 3. We're dying. It's difficult. We need to get the rules and regs put together and be able to open." So myself and a couple of other legislators got together, and not only with them, with Longfellows, but there's an organization, there's an association of the health centers for the whole state. So we worked with them. We got together, we had a meeting, and we put together rules and regulations that we proposed and sent it to the governor's task force, and they were able to open. Yeah,
that's great.
maybe a little sooner than they would have otherwise. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, you're talking about the gardening businesses that really depend, particularly at that juncture. They were, against the wall in essence because it was the planting season starting. Right. I mean, that the time was of the essence. Time is money again, right. and again with the fitness center. Thank you for those very concrete examples. Sure. that we all know, that we all visit. Yeah, and so that concludes our kind of this our very short kind of reflection on how what's happening on Beacon Hill is impacting us on Wayland, and how legislators like yourself kind of do that liaise in that way and kind of really help us both understand and connect our concerns to Beacon Hill, so that these regulations, for example, are kind of pushed forward on a faster track because they have direct impact on businesses here. Do you have any final words, kind of, thinking about why or how Waylanders could be hopeful, at this kind of time around,
Well, I think there's every good reason for us to be hopeful because, our greatest asset, not only in Wayland, but in the whole Commonwealth are the people, our people. We have the highest educated workforce in the United States, so that before this pandemic hit us, we had the lowest unemployment rate in the United States. We now have the highest, but we're going to come out of it. We're going to come out of it, and we'll be, and the reason we're going to come out of it is because we have this resource. We have the best workforce in the whole country. And, this is the biosciences capital of the country, capital of the world in the greater Boston area. So we'll come out of this, and we'll come out of it, sooner rather than later.
Okay, thank you very much, and Julie, with leadership like yourself, we appreciate that, all the work that you're doing on our behalf.
Thank you, Elaine.
Thank you for joining us today for our very first episode. My guest, State Representative Carmine Gentile, my great appreciation. And that is Bringing Home Beacon Hill, episode 1. Thank you very much.